Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into what is honestly a biological holy grail, actually tracing the physical evolution of ancient shapes across millions of years. For decades, biologists have dreamed of looking at a modern animal and accurately calculating exactly what its ancestors looked like. Well, today we're going to explore a new tool that finally makes analyzing this previously impossible data a total reality. So, how do we actually trace the evolution of a physical shape across millions of years? What's really interesting about this question is that while scientists desperately want to map out these complex evolutionary changes, they've historically been stopped dead in their tracks by a severe computational bottleneck. And we aren't just talking about a lack of data here, we're talking about an insurmountable mathematical wall. Just figuring out how a bone structure or a wing pattern warped and changed over millions of years requires computing power that honestly, until very recently, just caused traditional systems to fail. Section 1. The grand puzzle and the massive data bottleneck. Okay, to really wrap our heads around the problem, we first need to define phylogenetic inference. Think of this as the exact mathematical framework scientists use to calculate evolutionary trajectories and ancestral states. Imagine drawing out a vast family tree for a group of animals, right? But instead of just writing down names, you're mathematically reverse engineering their exact 3D body shapes at every single branching point in history. You are literally trying to reverse engineer nature's design. But here is the major roadblock. When you try to calculate these complex, nonlinear stochastic processes across hundreds of species using dozens of 3D coordinates, well, the math is so incredibly heavy that traditional computers just screech to a halt. Think about it. If you want to track how a bird's beak evolved, it didn't just grow longer in a perfectly straight line. It warped, it widened, and it curved unpredictably over millions of years. When biologists asked traditional computers to calculate those chaotic 3D changes for hundreds of species all at once, the system simply ran out of memory and crashed. Game over. Section 2. Meet hyperreacts, the assembly line. To understand the fix, think of the old way as a single master craftsman sitting at a desk. They're manually drawing the evolutionary blueprints for one species at a time. It works, sure, but it takes absolutely forever. The new way, this tool called hyperreacts, is like a fully automated, parallelized factory assembly line. Instead of that slow manual process, it uses modern graphics accelerators to process massive datasets simultaneously, mapping out the entire branching tree layout almost instantly. Let's break down how this actually builds a picture of the past. HyperReacts performs a sequence of operations known as BFFG, which stands for backward filtering, forward guiding. The concept is actually beautifully simple. First, backward filtering looks at modern animals and works backward to guess the ancient ancestor's shape. It's kind of like trying to guess a grandparent's original recipe just by tasting the dishes of their descendants. Then, forward guiding simulates evolution back down the tree, basically cooking the recipe forward, to see how those physical traits would naturally adapt over time. Finally, message fusion combines all of this data at the branching points to create a rock-solid, mathematically sound timeline. Section 3. Butterflies and bird beaks. To see exactly what this looks like in the real world, let's look at a dataset analyzing the evolution of butterfly wings. This was mapped across a massive evolutionary tree containing 850 individual nodes, meaning 850 distinct branching points of species. Now, to give you some context on why that's a big deal, previous calculations usually maxed out at about 30 nodes. So by successfully processing a tree with 850 nodes, HyperReacts achieved a scale of analysis that had literally never been reached before. It completely shattered that mathematical wall. And this wasn't just simple data either. Every single butterfly shape in that dataset was mapped using 118 specific, high-dimensional 2D landmarks. You can think of a landmark kind of like a dot in a really complex biological connect-the-dots puzzle. By placing 118 dots on a butterfly's wing, scientists capture its exact intricate geometry. HyperReacts was incredibly able to track how all 118 of those dots shifted and warped across those 850 evolutionary branches, revealing the ancient ancestral wing shape of these exact butterflies. But it gets better because HyperReacts isn't just limited to 2D data like butterfly wings. It successfully reconstructed the evolutionary history of avian beaks using 79 3D landmarks across nearly 700 nodes. Because 3D shapes warp in such incredibly complex ways, analyzing a dataset like this would have previously been completely impossible for computers. But now, it's solved in mere seconds, giving scientists highly accurate estimates of what ancient bird beaks actually looked like and exactly how fast they evolved. Section 4. The future of evolution. So, why does this matter for the future of biology over the next few years? The true impact here is that we can finally bypass all that high-error guesswork. Scientists can now map complex 3D shape changes, what they call high-dimensional morphometrics, at totally unprecedented speeds. And that means we can directly link a microscopic genetic mutation to a physical adaptation, like a beak curving or a wing widening, across millions of years. It's an absolutely thrilling time because questions that were locked away for centuries are finally accessible. This breakthrough proves we're moving away from merely cataloging isolated biological parts and entering an era of deep systems-level understanding of nature's design. We aren't just looking at fossils and making isolated notes anymore. We finally have the computational tools to connect all the dots across time, basically building a continuous, mathematically rigorous movie of how life physically shaped itself on Earth. So, I'll leave you with this to think about. As our computational limits vanish and our algorithms become powerful enough to handle the beautiful, chaotic math of nature, what deeply hidden evolutionary blueprints are waiting to be uncovered in the data tomorrow? I mean, if we can digitally rebuild an ancient bird's beak in seconds today, imagine what entire ecosystems we might reconstruct tomorrow. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.